ThinkTall Conversations, brought to you by Barista. Hello and welcome to another fantastic edition of ThinkTall Conversations, coming to you from the beautiful Barista outlet in Nugegoda. It's a brand new outlet. You cannot miss it if you're living in the vicinity of Nugegoda. This is one place that you need to come on over, chill, relax, as always, have some fantastic coffee. On the show, the ThinkTall Conversations, we are talking to young leaders who have inspired their segment, who have inspired their ecosystem of their own industry, their own expertise. What we're actually going to be speaking to them about is, of course, the trials before the triumphs, the setbacks, what they did, how the think tall mindset came into play in order for them to be successful in situations where they almost gave up. Today we have another fantastic, inspiring leader. His name is Shehan Selvanayagam. Of course, he's been in the digital sphere for a very, very long time. He's a managing director of Loops Integrated. Plus, you can always also go ahead and talk to him about how he's sort of below the radar angel investor in so many different startups. Shehan, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you, thank you.
We've known each other for a long time. It's the first time I'm interviewing you.
First time you call me young.
But good to have you on the show, Shehan.
Thank you.
You obviously have a passion of, the digital sphere. It's always been a passion for you. And you've also basically moved into helping lots of other startups to kickstart and push forward up to a certain level, and then when you feel when they're actually ready to go, you let them go. But before we get into all that, what's the most unusual or interesting job you've actually had before you entered into the creative industry, and how did it shape your perspective in life?
Okay, so before starting on my own, I've done probably about 12 different jobs.
Right.
Ranging from being a tea taster.
Okay.
And actually tasting and grading tea, that was for about a 2-month period.
Right.
To selling cars, to multiple banks, to call centers, to all of that, and that was crazy. I think one of my first things actually that shaped him was working in a call center.
Okay.
I was fortunate at a very, very young age to get a management position. And I realized that, and I was very overconfident of myself at that point.
Right.
And I realized that sometimes when there are problems that come in, how you handle it. And I learned that sometimes you need to just the title doesn't matter, and also how you get into the skill set. So that taught me a lot at that point.
So those times, of course, can you sort of, toggle your memory and see if there, maybe even in your childhood that you had to think creatively to overcome a challenge? And how has that thought process moved on up to where you are right now?
Okay. So, as a childhood, I was an introvert.
Right.
I kind of still am also. And I had
That's a lie.
So, I had a very vivid imagination.
Right.
And that kind of helped me learn. One thing is, look at even in what I've done when I've done about 10 different jobs, that learning from different fields allowed me to kind of use that even in my day-to-day and translate understanding certain things.
Okay.
Having an imagination and understanding how you can do it is important.
Right.
I actually learned a lot from YouTube, watching cartoons, and sometimes I can relate that in things which you can do.
Right, right.
And that's something which I find interesting.
Are you a self-learner though?
Yeah, pretty much.
Have you always been a self-learner?
Well, I've done my typical educational background, but I do a lot of self-learning.
Okay.
Self-learning, self-failing.
Right, okay. Well, that's something that we obviously want to talk about because like I said earlier on, everyone sees Shehan Selvanayagam as a successful individual, right? As somebody who's actually helped start up lots of companies. Loops Integrated, of course, one of the premier digital agencies in the country at the moment. But there have been lots of setbacks.
Yeah.
There have been lots of challenges, which is what we want to actually talk about. What was a turning point or a moment of inspiration that made you realize pursuing a career in digital media was what you actually wanted to do?
So I was at a bank, and basically this was before digital or social media was a term.
Right.
And literally I remember setting up a social media account for that bank, and then I walked up to the CEO and said, this is going to be the future. The CEO was like, no, this is pointless, why spend money, do all of those things. And at that point I realized that it was a point where I realized that I believe that's the future, and if I want to do something, I need to build that whole funnel.
Right.
And that was probably that month I could decision to leave and start my own firm in this space.
Right.
And this was something which kind of pivoted me into in terms of digital marketing. And at that point when we started, we were probably one of the first 2-3 firms in Sri Lanka. Now there's so many people doing this space.
Right.
And it's very tough to establish yourself. Companies don't even understand. They thought social media, at that time it was only Facebook, was like just for fun,
Right.
for kids.
Right.
They didn't understand the business would use it. So that was something that kind of took out a learning point on that side.
Why were you so convinced that digital media or digital marketing was the future at that point? What was that made you so convinced?
So my simple logic is that when people are there, brands should follow.
Okay.
And social media was picking up at a very, very fast pace. But no brands were online there. No clients were there. It was just that there were a lot more users than brands.
Right.
And I realized there was a gap somewhere that no one is capturing. And that's something I realized you can do a lot in that space.
Okay, all right. So that really pushed you. I mean,
Yeah.
so much so that you had to leave your job.
Yeah.
Because that was a faith that you had.
And even after I quit my job, I think for about 6-8 months, we were going out, me and my colleague, we were out selling digital marketing and all that. And no one believed in it.
Right.
And then one moment, 1 or 2 companies realized there was potential, and then it started pivoting. And then digital media started growing, because that time, very, very few companies were using digital.
Can you basically give us talk to us about a story, a time where you introduced a groundbreaking idea that encouraged a new way of thinking at Loops Integrated, and how did that innovation contribute to Loops' success?
Okay. So something is, the last 2-3 jobs I was in a typical corporate life. And one thing I realized that a lot of things is empowering and giving freedom to people. I remember simple things that people like is giving them phones, laptop, giving them the freedom. I think when you trust people, people will deliver and they will not fail you. As
Right.
long as they also know that you're working with them. Sometimes I remember, like I told you, when I was in corporate life, even to get like a laptop was a huge process to get those days. Like people think, why do you need a laptop? All of those things. And I remember when I started a business, I just said, here's a laptop, you can do whatever you want, you can watch videos, no one's going to monitor it. And for people, when they got it, they were like, wow, this is refreshing. And they said, okay, if someone is trusting me that much, I must do what I want.
Okay.
And that freedom allowed people also to understand, look, I'm trusting you, so therefore you need to deliver. And that allowed me to understand that people actually want the freedom and the trust. And sometimes very traditional corporates don't do that. They have all these checks and balances to make sure that people do that, but they don't allow them to think, give freedom to think.
So by you giving that freedom to individuals, of course, working at Loops or whatever, has there been any situations where people have misused that freedom?
Very much.
Okay.
But
Could that not be the reason that corporates are not necessarily going down that road, because they don't want to be babysitting?
yeah, but you must have freedom and you must have controls in place.
Right.
Like if people step out of line, tell them that.
Okay.
And so far what I've seen, the benefits outweighs the negative.
Okay.
Give them freedom, they will actually deliver. And that's something which I've seen. There are few people that step out of line, so we say, hey, please don't do this or something like that. But if you trust in them, most people deliver.
Okay.
At least when it comes to skilled people or educated people in terms of that.
So thinking tall is something that, of course, Shehan, you've been doing for many, many years, because obviously faced with obstacles, faced with pushbacks, you're someone that I personally know that actually thinks on his feet. Was there a situation where, for example, maybe a specific project or a campaign that you have encountered unforeseen obstacles? Because, you know, we sit down, we basically always have your premier plan, then you got plan B and plan C, and then, you know, it's an unforeseen obstacle that has actually come about. If there was an instance that you can share with us and walk us through the challenges and how your team encountered those challenges and the creative solutions that you came up with.
Thing is, especially in digital, every time is unforeseen challenge.
Right.
Nothing goes according to plan. What I learned is when you work with clients, tell them, keep them informed, communicate with them, and a lot of clients will get your back if they know that you are doing the best for them. And so far clients have always been in that thing. So if you tell them, hey, something is going wrong, I'm keeping you informed, they always want that open communication. I think that is something that allows you to manage that whole process. I mean, there are so many things that really don't go according to plan.
Yeah.
But it's always about talking to clients. Like we had like commercial shoots where we spent millions shooting and we had to reshoot the whole thing purely because some tiny thing went wrong. But that's the nature of the game. And then as long as you tell the client understands and they're willing to support your side. So I think clearly whatever you do, if you work with any brand, have them as your friends, partners and all that. And most cases they will have your back.
Was there a point, Shehan, where you almost lost a client? It was actually hanging by a thread, but that somehow that you found the resilient in you and of course the team together that you decided to actually bring them back.
Yeah, so actually there was one client, I won't mention names.
Right. Would be nice.
So, I mean, they were client like the team was saying they were always about to leave. And then I said, okay, fine, let me go. And then I just started building relationships with them and talking to them. And to be honest, I know most of them on a personal level right now.
Right.
And that allowed them to be actually one of our favorite clients.
Okay.
It's a love-hate relationship still, but we have an open conversation with them. So much so at that client, when people leave to join other places, they actually call us and give us business. And it's a relationship. So that's what I learned. You shouldn't just think of it like a project. You must build relationships. And even some of the team members in my office, when you have relationships with your clients, partners, friends, always doors get open. I mean, if you look at our business, most of the business inquiries we get is organic.
Right.
I would say about 90%.
Right.
And relationships matter a long way.
Right.
I mean, whom we meet, like example, I know you or different people, different speakers, things like that. Relationships matter. And that's something that you can leverage on and open doors in terms of that. So I think that's very important.
Setbacks with you, I mean, obviously there must be a fair amount of setbacks setting up loops itself, because you did mention that nobody understood digital media, so you had to actually educate them first before you sort of moved on forward. How do you deal with pushbacks and setbacks? Is there a mantra that you follow? Is there a philosophy that you have that you can sense a setback coming a mile away and you get prepared?
Not really. Most setbacks are unexpected.
Right.
But what I learned, everyone who knows me knows that I'm a person who doesn't get angry.
Okay.
And I learned to kind of take back, think, and figure out how to solve a problem. I've got angry a handful of times in my life.
Right.
Very, very rarely. And I've learned that being cool and trying to figure out a solution works. That's the only way how to currently look into.
By you, was that something from childhood itself, or did you cultivate that?
No. So, like, I actually watched a few leaders whom I worked with. Like, sometimes I was a person who used to get always worked up. And I get flustered and I started freezing earlier.
Right.
And I don't know how to solve a problem. And then I watch certain people, they just look and they talk.
Right.
Sometimes the simple thing where they say, ask a person for the answer, they will give the answer for you.
Right.
So sometimes if you want to be a lazy manager, you have an employee come into you and ask them the answer, solution, they'll give the solution. And sometimes that works. Sometimes talking to people, taking time to calm down can actually give you a solution.
Interesting way of looking at it. Looking back at your journey, can you actually recount a moment or that you've experienced a significant setback or failure where you were in a position that you just, you can't take it anymore?
So personally, it's been two things. I had two tough periods. One is COVID.
Yeah.
Obviously,
but COVID would obviously have, be beneficial for a company like
yeah,
you.
but personally it was very tough. Like sitting at home, two kids screaming, wife in one room, and figure out how to juggle multiple calls. It was a huge stress.
Right.
And that's the point I was thinking, why are we doing all of that? Because you have so much of things to figure out. That was the 2-3 months transition point where everyone went through that stress. Personally, as a setback, I would say some learning which I had is, because like I said, I do a lot of different startups and investments, and something what I learned is learning when to fail. Like example, long time ago.
Do you have a fear of failure?
I used to.
Okay. How did you change that?
By my first failure and losing a lot of money, I realized that I need to stop being emotionally attached.
Right.
Like long time ago, I started a food business, and we were bleeding money.
Okay.
At one point, we were making food which was costing us more than the price we were selling it for. Operationally, it was a loss. Marketing wise, we were able to bring in business, bring in customers, all of that. And I realized that fundamentally, and I was pumping in more money into the business because operationally was a loss. And I realized that, look, my strength is marketing. I'm not good in the kitchen in terms of that. And took a step back and said, okay, I must not be emotionally attached to the business because I must be okay to fail.
Right.
And willing to shut that down was the toughest decision I made. But then understand that if you are not emotionally attached, that's the best way. And that allowed me to understand, think rationally. Because a lot of people are so emotionally attached to whatever they do, they don't think beyond that. Understanding the best opportunity to sell your business, best opportunity to exit your business, best opportunity to start something. When you do something, don't be too emotionally attached to that. Do something with passion, but emotion is different.
Okay. Now you obviously, I'm sure you've got lots of young entrepreneurs coming towards you for advice, also for you to be a part of the business to help them start up. What do you look for? What actually ticks for you to decide there's potential in this?
Mainly, it's not the product, it's the person.
Right.
If the person is passionate, they can do anything. The product or whatever the startup they're trying to do doesn't matter. It's a person. It's simply the person.
Okay.
Even if that startup fails, you can get that person to something else.
Right.
And that's something that has worked a lot.
So passion, how do you identify somebody who actually has a passion? Do they over talk about the product?
It's how, when you talk to them, you can get the pulse. And sometimes when you talk to them, they follow up with you. Like if they are serious and they're hungry, they will call you, they'll harass you and talk to you on that side. How soon they get back. And the conversations when you have with them. So when you talk to people for about half an hour, you'll get an idea how passionate they are for the business. That's something we realize. And how they're keen about saying, look, I believe in this product, I can make it succeed and all of that. That being said, also product is also important, but a passion is an important factor.
Which point do you feel that you obviously need to exit?
When you can make more money.
When you can make more money?
No, not really. Exiting a startup is two things. So if it's doing badly, you must understand when to fail.
Right.
At the point where if you either you feel you're not the right fit, and example harming that not really right fit for the business to grow, and you can't add value, then you can exit. Or example, if you're pumping in money, realize that just by pumping in money you get a solution, then you can exit. If you're exiting a business, a profitable business, you must see what your ROI is and what you can get out of it. That's something you look at in terms of what you're exiting.
Have you made a bad decision in investing in a startup? You don't have to talk about the startup.
Yes, actually I have. So the thing is this, always we invest in the people.
Right.
Sometimes the people, even though we lose money, we part on in good terms. So there is even a IoT startup we got involved in, put in a bit of money, and to be honest, we're good friends with them.
Right.
Because it was not the owners that fell, is the business and circumstances. There are businesses which we help them, and sometimes we had a clash with the owner's personality in terms of that. And that, of course, I understand we exit. Some of the businesses grow without us even. But there are bad decisions. But I don't think if I go back and see whether I'll do it again, I'll still do it.
Right.
I still believe in what they're trying to do.
Right. Okay. You know, Shehan, I mean, I think maybe straight after the COVID situation that we had in the country, there are lots of entrepreneurs out there. Yeah, there are lots of people who obviously have lots of ideas. Unfortunately, maybe they were forced to do it because they were laid off from work. And how is the entrepreneur ecosystem in the country at the moment?
Okay, so right now there is a lot of buzzword around entrepreneurship.
Right.
Good also. There is also lip service where people do, but there are a lot of initiatives. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, now is one of the best times. I remember 14 years ago when I started, I was called a businessman and my parents didn't want to talk about me.
Right.
My brother was a banker and I was the child which no one wanted to talk about.
Right.
So
we've all been there, Shehan, don't worry about it.
So, I mean, I don't come from a very traditional Tamil family, but being a bank accountant was like a good thing to be.
Right.
Being a businessman is considered a bad thing.
Right.
But now there's so much support for entrepreneurship. There's so much options for raising investment, so much ecosystem for you to learn, so many people get advice. Even recently, so banks are giving low-cost loans also for entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of options in Sri Lanka. And I think you can easily do that.
How true is this statement that if you are actually looking for funding at the early stage of your business, you can't necessarily call yourself an entrepreneur, can you?
I don't think asking for funding is a bad thing. There's nothing wrong. But I think there are a couple of stages when you look at startups. Sometimes people have an idea. Generally, if it's just an idea, you can just have a concept in your mind on a deck. You invest in the person. Sometimes if a person has a good prototype, then you can invest in the product. There's no harm asking for money. There's nothing wrong in asking for money. That's a good indicator. But sometimes people watch all these foreign programs and they think their business is worth $1 million, $2 million just on an idea.
Right.
Some are, no two words,
Right.
but there are some people who just ask that value just because they think they can ask.
All right. Okay.
So that's the only thing.
Interesting. Shehan, obviously we're talking about ThinkTall mindset that we had. It has not been a rosy path as far as even Loops is concerned, right? Because you've got now, I believe, what the creative industry, among so many other industries, is suffering is a lack of talent. It's very difficult to find people who you can actually hold on for a longer period. How do you counter that?
One is always try and look after the people you have. And when you say look after, is not your standard like HR policies.
But sometimes it's not really the company's fault, is it, that they want to actually move out?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, my logic is that if someone is moving on for something better, I let them.
Right.
I even encourage them.
Right.
And we remain very good friends. So to be honest, a lot of people are left even Loops. I even go for the weddings and all that. I'm very proud to see them doing a lot of things.
Right.
And it's always about building that funnel to train talent. We have had some good success training some new talent, getting them to win awards, even recently some Spikes Awards, all of those things.
That's right.
And these were talent where they have zero experience at all. And they kind of join the industry, join us, get the knowledge and do all of that. So that's something. I think you have to build that whole pipeline of talent also. But you must have senior people enough who can provide the guidance. Thankfully, even say at a lot of the startups or even Loops, I got senior people who understand the same values and they're willing to teach and learn. So that whole culture is there in terms of that.
Now, obviously, we're coming to the end of the conversation, and being a part of a digital media ecosystem is pretty stressful.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that you're always running behind deadlines and your client always wanted it yesterday, right? And in order to build a team that actually can withstand, you need a strong leader, and you also need someone who can sort of you can empathize with also your team and the client, because it's something that's actually balancing. There are lots of people out there who are finding it very difficult to set foot in this industry because they do not have that I suppose that self-confidence in seeing if they can do something like that. You being in the industry, talking to other potential leaders out there, what would you tell them? How would you advise them to get into this industry?
So one is digital industry is too crowded. Don't get into it.
Don't get into it. Okay. I think we're done with the conversation.
There's way too many people doing this space.
Right.
But if you can figure out whatever you do, if you have passion and you can motivate the people in your team to have the same passion, that always works. Thankfully, I've got people who work with me, who have been with me for over 12, 13, 14 years.
Right.
I even sometimes tell them to move out also for their benefit as well. And those are people who really drive the whole message down. So they actually share the same values which I do also. And they practice the same thing. So they'll also kind of teach people to learn things like that. So that's something which I like.
In terms of setbacks, just before we wind up the show, in terms of setbacks, everybody has a different challenge in their life. And one of your traits, of course, is the fact that you've cultivated the fact that you do not get angry. So you'd like to sort of, digest the problem before you come out with a solution. How do potential leaders encounter setbacks, and how do you think the best way to come out of it, in your opinion?
I think if you take a moment to sit and think, I think you'll get the answer for most of the problems. I think it's just simply sometimes when we have a problem, we tend to react.
Right.
And that's even a problem I have at times also. Sometimes, okay, what's the solution? I sometimes still do that, but sometimes if you stop and think, you may have a better solution. Or sometimes it may solve itself even sometimes. So something that I think works a lot.
All right, so Think Tall is right here on the show. Shehan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming by. It was lovely to have a chat with you. And Shehan Selvanayagam, of course, has been in the digital media industry for a very, very long time. Helped lots of startups. He's still helping lots of startups out there. And he's a great guy to talk to. If you have a fantastic idea, he'll be more than happy to sit down and have a chat with you. That's what we do on Think Talk Conversations with Barista. We look at inspiring young leaders out there who can obviously inspire the next generation going forward, and also look at the fact that, you know, they're also human. It doesn't mean that just because they're doing well right now, they didn't have the setbacks, they didn't have the challenges, they didn't have the trials, but what did they do when they actually hit that speed bump? That's what we talk about right here on Think Talk Conversations with Barista. We've got so many fantastic and inspiring leaders coming up. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.